King Chibueze, a respected 65-year-old first-class traditional ruler, ruled over one of the wealthiest kingdoms in southeastern Nigeria. His magnificent palace stood like a masterpiece of modern architecture, surrounded by beautifully landscaped gardens, sparkling fountains, and expensive luxury SUVs parked in the grand courtyard. Inside, the palace reflected elegance. Italian marble floors stretched across every hallway. Massive crystal chandeliers illuminated the spacious living rooms. Cream and gold sofas surrounded glass coffee tables, while priceless African artworks decorated the walls. Every room blended royal tradition with modern luxury. Despite possessing unimaginable wealth, King Chibueze carried a burden that robbed him of peace. He had only one child, a daughter with Queen Amanda. Unfortunately, the princess had become addicted to drugs and alcohol. She spent more time at nightclubs than inside the palace, leaving the king heartbroken. Late one evening, King Chibueze sat quietly inside his luxurious private lounge overlooking the palace gardens. Queen Amanda entered. "My king," she greeted softly. The king sighed deeply. "Amanda, I am getting old." She sat beside him. "I know. I have no son to inherit this throne." Amanda lowered her eyes. "Our daughter has disappointed this kingdom." Silence filled the room. Finally the king looked at her. "If there is anything at all, you can do to give me another child." He paused. "Please give me a son." Amanda forced a smile. "I'll do everything possible, my king." The following morning, the king secretly traveled to a five-star hotel in Lagos. He had arranged a confidential IVF agreement with a wealthy foreign donor. The agreement required him to pay $5,000. As he arrived, a young hotel porter named Obina respectfully carried his leather briefcase to the presidential suite. "Thank you, sir," the king said. "My pleasure, your majesty." Minutes later, the donor arrived. The contract was placed on the table. King Chibueze opened his briefcase to bring out the money. Suddenly, his smile disappeared. His hands froze. "What?" He searched the briefcase again. Only $1,000 remained. The money. He became furious. "My $7,000! He counted repeatedly. Only 1,000 remained. 5,000 meant for the IVF. 1,000 for hotel expenses. Everything else was gone. His face turned red. "Manager!" The hotel manager rushed inside. "Your Majesty, the young man who carried my briefcase. Call him immediately." A few minutes later, Obina entered. "Good afternoon, your Majesty." The king pointed angrily. "You stole my money." Obina looked confused. "My king, you are the only person who touched this briefcase. I swear before God I didn't steal anything." "Liar, my king." "Manager, call the police." Within minutes, police officers stormed into the hotel. Despite Obina's desperate explanations, he was handcuffed before the shocked hotel workers. "I am innocent." Nobody listened. As the police vehicle drove away, Obina stared silently through the window. He wondered if anyone would believe him. Far away, his family had no idea their lives were about to change forever. The news of Obina's arrest spread quickly throughout the small town where he lived. By evening, neighbors stood in groups discussing the incident. "I heard he stole money from a king." "That young man?" "Impossible. They said it was $5,000. But Obina has never been known as a thief." Some believed the rumors, while others defended him. Unfortunately, once the word thief was attached to someone's name, many people judged without waiting to hear the truth. Several kilometers away, inside a poor neighborhood, stood a small, weather-beaten bungalow where Obina lived with his twin sister, Chiamaka, and their mentally unstable mother, Adaeze. The compound was quiet, except for Adaeze, who sat beneath a mango tree, humming strange songs and talking to herself. She laughed one moment and cried the next. Inside the house, Chiamaka, a beautiful 22-year-old caramel-skinned lady, was preparing a simple meal of rice and stew. Though life had been difficult, she always remained hopeful. Suddenly, someone knocked hurriedly on the door. "Chiamaka! Chiamaka!" a familiar voice shouted. She quickly opened the door. "Mike!" Mike stood there breathing heavily, sweat covering his face. His expression alone told Chiamaka that something terrible had happened. "What is it?" she asked nervously. Mike struggled to find the right words. It's Obina." Her heart skipped. What happened to my brother? He has been arrested. The cooking spoon slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. What? He was accused of stealing $5,000 from King Chibueze. Chiamaka staggered backwards. No. Mike quickly held her before she collapsed. That cannot be true, she whispered repeatedly. My brother cannot steal. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. Are Obina? Mike nodded sadly. They said the king himself ordered his arrest. Before Chiamaka could speak again, Adaeze suddenly walked into the sitting room. She looked at both of them, laughed loudly for no reason, then picked up an empty plastic bottle and began talking to it. You've come back? She asked the bottle. Chiamaka turned away and cried harder. Seeing their mother's condition made the situation even more painful. Mike gently held Chiamaka's shoulders. Listen to me. She looked at him through tears. I have known Obina since secondary school. He has never stolen even 1 naira. He always returns change whenever we buy something. He even gives food to hungry children. I know. Chiamaka wiped her eyes. He is my twin brother. We shared the same womb. I know everything about him. He would rather go hungry than steal. Mike nodded. Then we must fight for him. The following morning, Mike and Chiamaka boarded a commercial bus to the neighboring town where Obina was being detained. The journey felt unusually long. Neither of them spoke much. Chiamaka silently prayed throughout the trip. God, please let justice speak. They finally arrived at the police station. The atmosphere was cold and depressing. Prisoners sat quietly behind iron bars. Some looked hopeless. Others stared blankly into space. A police officer led them toward the detention cell. Your visitor is here, he announced. Obina slowly stood. His face was swollen from stress. His usually cheerful smile had disappeared. The moment Chiamaka saw him behind the bars, she burst into tears. Obina, my sister. She held the iron bars tightly. What have they done to you? Obina forced a weak smile. I'm all right. No, you're not. Mike stepped closer. My brother. Obina looked at him. They're accusing me of something I didn't do. I know, Mike replied immediately. I never touched the king's money. I only carried his briefcase from the hotel entrance to his room. After that, I left. They refused to believe me. Chiamaka shook her head. You don't have to explain. You are my twin. I know your heart. You cannot steal. Obina smiled faintly as tears gathered in his eyes. Thank you. Mike placed his hand against the bars. We believe you. We'll do everything possible to get you out. But how? Obina asked quietly. The king is convinced I'm guilty. There must be another way. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Mike broke the silence. We'll go to the palace. Obina looked surprised. The palace? Yes, we'll beg the king. We'll tell him the truth. Chiamaka nodded firmly. I'll kneel if I have to. I don't care. My brother will not rot in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Obina sighed. The king looked too angry. Still, Mike replied confidently, a compassionate heart can change. The police officer looked at his wristwatch. Visiting time is over. Chiamaka held the bars tightly one last time. Stay strong. We're coming back for you. Obina nodded slowly. I'll be waiting. As they walked out of the station, Chiamaka looked back one final time. Seeing her innocent brother, locked behind iron bars, filled her heart with pain. She clenched her fists. No matter what it takes, she whispered, I will bring my brother home. Beside her, Mike nodded with determination. Together, they began the journey to the king's magnificent palace, unaware that fate was already preparing a shocking revelation that would change every life forever. The following morning, the golden rays of the sun reflected beautifully on the glass windows of King Chibueze's magnificent palace. The royal residence was a breathtaking blend of modern luxury and Igbo tradition. The massive entrance gate opened into a spacious compound lined with neatly trimmed flowers, royal palm trees, and expensive black SUVs parked in perfect order. Inside the palace, polished Italian marble floors shone beneath enormous crystal chandeliers. Cream-colored sofas with gold trimmings surrounded elegant glass tables, while handcrafted African sculptures and paintings decorated the walls. The atmosphere radiated wealth and authority. Meanwhile, a commercial bus stopped a few meters from the palace gate. Mike and Chiamaka stepped down. Neither of them had ever been inside such a luxurious place. Chiamaka adjusted her simple dress and looked nervously at Mike. "Do you think the king will listen to us?" she asked. Mike took a deep breath. "We have no other choice. If we don't try, Obinna may remain in prison." She nodded. "Let's go." As they approached the royal gate, two heavily armed palace guards crossed their rifles. "Halt! What is your mission?" Mike respectfully bowed. "Good morning, officers. We are here to see His Majesty, King Chibueze." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, we only came to beg for mercy." One of the guards looked at them carefully. "You are the family of the hotel staff?" "Yes," Mike answered. The guards exchanged glances before speaking into a communication radio. After several minutes, the large electronic gates slowly opened. "You may enter, but mind your words before the king." Mike and Chiamaka thanked them and walked inside. As they crossed the beautifully paved courtyard, Chiamaka couldn't stop admiring the magnificent palace. "This place is like heaven," she whispered. Mike smiled faintly, yet the owner has no peace. Soon they were led into the royal audience hall. The hall was enormous. A grand crystal chandelier hung from the high ceiling, casting light across the polished marble floor. At the far end stood an impressive golden throne. King Chibueze sat majestically on it, wearing an expensive white agbada embroidered with gold threads, a traditional red Igbo cap, coral beads around his neck, and holding an ivory staff. Several chiefs sat quietly on either side of him. Queen Amanda was also seated nearby, watching silently. The palace attendant announced loudly, "Your Majesty, the sister of the accused and her companion, seek your audience." The king nodded. "They may speak." Immediately, Mike and Chiamaka walked forward. Without hesitation, both of them knelt. "My king," Mike began respectfully, "we have come to beg for mercy." Chiamaka folded her hands as tears filled her eyes. "Your Majesty, please forgive my brother. He did not steal your money." The king's face hardened. "Are you here to teach me justice?" She replied quickly, "I only know my brother. We are twins. We grew up together. I know everything about him. He has never stolen from anyone. My king, please, I beg you in the name of God, release my brother." The king's expression remained cold. "If he is innocent." He paused. "Then where is my money?" Neither of them answered. The silence became heavy. "You claim he didn't steal. But my $5,000 disappeared. Only your brother handled my briefcase. What conclusion should I draw?" Mike spoke respectfully. "My king, there may be another explanation." "There isn't." The king's voice echoed throughout the hall. "My money must be returned." Chiamaka crawled closer on her knees. "My king, my brother has already suffered enough. He has our sick mother waiting for him. Our family has no one else. We are begging you." Some of the chiefs quietly looked at one another. One elderly chief whispered, "The girl is speaking from her heart." Another chief nodded. "She truly believes in her brother." But the king remained unmoved. He stood from his throne. His commanding voice filled the hall. "When you bring back my $5,000, I shall release Obinna. But until then, he remains in police custody." Chiamaka cried harder. "My king, we don't even have $1,000. The king pointed toward the palace entrance. "That is not my concern. My money or your brother. Choose one." Mike bowed respectfully. "We understand, Your Majesty." The king turned away. "This audience is over. Leave my palace, and do not return until you have my complete $5,000. The palace guards gently escorted Mike and Chiamaka outside. The moment they reached the palace gate, Chiamaka could no longer hold back her emotions. She broke down in tears. Mike stood beside her silently. After several minutes, she spoke. "Where will we find $5,000? Mike looked at the busy road ahead. "I don't know, but I know one thing." She looked at him. "We are not giving up. For Obinna, for your mother, I'll do whatever it takes." Chiamaka wiped her tears. "What do you mean?" Mike hesitated before answering. "If selling everything I own is what it takes, I'll sell it." She stared at him in disbelief. No, Mike, you've already done too much for us. Mike smiled gently. Obina is more than a friend, he's my brother, and you're my family too. As they slowly walked away from the palace, neither of them noticed Queen Amanda watching them from the palace balcony. A strange smile appeared briefly on her face, before she quietly turned and walked back inside. Far away, Destiny was already preparing to expose a secret that had remained hidden for more than 22 years. 3 days passed, yet Obina remained in the police cell. Every morning he woke up, hoping someone would come with good news, but each evening ended in disappointment. Though other inmates complained bitterly, Obina remained calm. One of the officers looked at him one afternoon and shook his head. "You are a strange young man." Obina smiled faintly. "I believe the truth will one day speak." The officer sighed. "I wish every prisoner talked like you." Meanwhile, Mike had not slept properly since their visit to the king's palace. He spent the nights thinking of only one thing: $5,000. He looked at the only valuable thing he owned, his yellow Toyota taxi. That taxi had fed him for years. It paid his rent, bought food, and had even helped him support Chiamaka, Obina, and their mother whenever they needed help. Selling it meant losing his livelihood. He closed his eyes. "If this is the price to save my friend," he whispered, "then so be it." The following morning he drove to a used car dealer in the city. The dealer inspected the vehicle carefully. "The engine is good, the body is clean, but the market is not favorable." Mike replied calmly, "Just give me a fair price." After bargaining for nearly an hour, the dealer finally transferred the money. Mike counted everything. After converting the amount, it was worth only $4,000. He stared silently at the balance on his phone. "Only 4,000? The dealer shrugged. "That is the best I can offer." Mike thanked him and walked away. As he left the dealership on foot, he looked back at the taxi one last time. "So this is goodbye, old friend." His eyes became wet. Later that evening, Mike arrived at Chiamaka's house, carrying a small envelope. Chiamaka opened it. Inside were neatly arranged bundles of US dollars. She looked up in surprise. "Mike, you sold your taxi?" Mike nodded. She burst into tears. "Why would you do this?" Mike smiled gently. "Because Obina would have done the same for me." She held his hands tightly. "How do we ever repay you?" "You don't. I only want your brother back." Even a Daisy, still wandering around the compound in her confused state, clapped her hands and laughed, without understanding what was happening. Chiamaka looked at her mother with sadness. If only she were well. The next morning, Mike and Chiamaka returned to the king's palace. The guards recognized them immediately. "You've come back?" "Yes, we have brought the money." The guards allowed them inside. Soon they stood once again before King Chibueze. The king looked at the envelope in Mike's hands. "So, you have my money?" Mike respectfully handed it over. "My king, I sold my taxi. This is everything I have." The king opened the envelope. He counted slowly. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. He stopped. His face became cold. "This is not complete." Mike bowed his head. "My king, that is all I could raise. We are still looking for the remaining $1,000. Chiamaka immediately knelt. "My king, please, my brother has suffered enough. Accept this first, we'll bring the balance." The king stood up angrily. "Did I ask for 4,000? No, your majesty. My money is $5,000, not 4. He threw the envelope onto the table. "Take it away." Mike was speechless. "My king, I have nothing left." The king's voice thundered through the hall. "Then, go and find the balance. Do not waste my time." Chiamaka crawled forward in tears. "Please." The king pointed toward the exit. "Leave, and do not return until my money is complete." The palace guards gently escorted them outside once again. As they walked through the palace gates, Chiamaka could barely stand. Mike supported her. "I failed," he said quietly. "No," Chiamaka replied through tears. "You've done more than anyone could ever do. but it's still not enough. That same afternoon, many kilometers away from the kingdom, a hunter named Okeke walked alone through a thick forest, carrying his hunting bag and a sharp machete. The sun was beginning to set when he reached a lonely riverbank. He bent down to drink water. Suddenly, something shiny floated toward him. "What is that?" He reached into the shallow water and picked up an old glass bottle, sealed tightly with wax. Inside the bottle was the faded photograph of a young woman. The hunter frowned. A woman's picture inside a sealed bottle? This is not ordinary. He remembered the stories told by his grandfather. Some wicked people tie other people's destinies with evil powers. He lifted the bottle toward the sky. Whoever did this is wicked. Without hesitation, he raised his machete. Crash! The bottle shattered into pieces. The hunter looked toward heaven and declared boldly, "Whoever's destiny has been imprisoned inside this bottle, regain your freedom." A sudden strong wind swept across the river. The trees shook violently. The hunter looked around in surprise. What was that? Just as suddenly as it had come, everything became still again. At that exact moment, back in the village, Adaizi suddenly stopped walking. She placed both hands on her head. Images flashed through her mind like lightning. A palace, a handsome king, a pregnancy, a jealous woman. She screamed loudly. "Ah!" Chiamaka, who had just returned home, rushed toward her. "Mummy!" Adaizi looked around slowly. For the first time in over 22 years, her eyes were clear. She looked at Chiamaka with confusion. "My daughter?" Chiamaka froze. "Mummy!" Adaizi touched her face gently. "Why are you crying?" Then she looked around the small compound. "Where am I? What happened to me?" Chiamaka burst into uncontrollable tears and hugged her tightly. "Mummy, you know me?" Adaizi nodded slowly. "Of course, you are my daughter. God has performed a miracle." Neither of them realized that Adaizi's restored memory was only the beginning. Hidden deep within her past was a truth that would shake King Chibuizi's palace, expose Queen Amanda's darkest secret, and reunite a father with the children he never knew he had. The small compound was filled with tears of joy. After more than 22 years of wandering the streets in confusion, Adaize was finally herself again. She looked around the modest house in disbelief. The cracked walls, the worn-out furniture, the patched roof. Nothing looked familiar. She turned to Chiamaka. "My daughter, where have we been all these years?" Chiamaka gently held her mother's hands. "Mummy, please sit down. There is so much to tell you." Adaize sat down quietly. For the first time in decades, there was peace in her eyes. Chiamaka narrated everything from the beginning. How she and Obina had struggled to survive. How people mocked their mother's madness. How Mike had stood by them through every hardship. And finally how Obina had been arrested for allegedly stealing $5,000 from King Chibueze. Adaize listened without interrupting. When Chiamaka mentioned the king's name, Adaize suddenly became still. Her breathing changed. "What did you say?" "The king. What is his name?" "King Chibueze." Adaize slowly stood up. Her eyes widened with shock. "King Chibueze?" "Yes." She covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh my God. Mummy, do you know him?" Chiamaka asked. Adaize remained silent for several seconds. Then tears rolled down her cheeks. "I know him. He is—" She stopped herself. "No, not yet." Chiamaka moved closer. "Mummy, what is happening?" Adaize looked at Chiamaka with unusual confidence. "Take me to the palace." Chiamaka frowned. "The palace?" "Yes, we are going there immediately." "No, Mummy, the king warned us not to return until we completed the $5,000. Mike has already sold his taxi. We managed to raise only $4,000. He rejected it. We cannot go back there." Adaize smiled calmly. "My daughter, forget the money. The moment I see King Chibueze, everything will be over." Chiamaka looked confused. "How can you be so sure?" Adaize looked toward the sky. "Because God has remembered me. I have remembered who I am." Although she refused to explain further, the confidence in her voice gave Chiamaka hope. After a brief discussion, they decided to travel to the neighboring town once again. Several hours later, they arrived at the magnificent royal palace. The huge electronic gates opened after the guards recognized Chiamaka. One guard whispered to another, "She's back again, but this time she came with an older woman." The two of them were escorted into the grand royal audience hall. Inside, the chiefs were already seated. King Chibueze occupied his magnificent golden throne, dressed in an immaculate white royal attire, embroidered with gold, his traditional red Igbo cap resting proudly on his head. Coral beads adorned his neck, and his ivory staff lay beside the throne. Queen Amanda sat elegantly beside him, wearing a luxurious royal gown and an expensive queen's crown. The palace attendant announced, "Your Majesty, the young lady and her companion have returned, and they are accompanied by an elderly woman." The king sighed. "I already told them my condition. They should have brought my complete money." As Adiaze stepped into the hall, her eyes met the king's. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. The king's face changed instantly. His royal staff slipped from his hand. He slowly rose from the throne. His lips trembled. He took one step forward. "Adiaze?" The chiefs looked at one another in confusion. The king stared at the woman before him as if he had seen a ghost. "It can't be. You are alive." Tears rolled down Adiza's cheeks. "Yes, I am alive." Before the king could speak again, Queen Amanda looked at Adiza. The color drained from her face. She stood abruptly. "No, no." She began trembling violently. Then suddenly, she clutched her head and screamed. "Ah!" The palace erupted into confusion. "My queen!" The palace attendants rushed toward her. Amanda pushed them away. She burst into uncontrollable laughter. "Ha ha ha! I confess! I confess!" The chief stood up in shock. The king turned sharply. "Amanda, what are you talking about?" She continued laughing hysterically. "I did it! I did it!" The king walked toward her angrily. "You did what?" Amanda pointed a shaking finger at Adiza. "I made her mad." The entire audience gasped. The king's eyes widened. "What?" Amanda laughed again before crying. "She was carrying your child. I was afraid she would give you a son before me, so I went to a native doctor. I wanted her out of the palace forever. I wanted my own child to become the heir. I destroyed her." She laughed and cried at the same time. "I destroyed her." The royal hall fell into complete silence. The chiefs could hardly believe what they had just heard. King Chibueze stood frozen. His heart pounded heavily. He slowly turned toward Adiza. Then his eyes moved to Chiamaka. He noticed the striking resemblance between the two women. His voice became weak. He walked slowly toward Chiamaka. With trembling hands, he gently touched her shoulder. His head remained bowed in shame. Quietly, almost in a whisper, he asked, Is this beautiful young woman my daughter?" Adiza nodded slowly. "Yes." A tear escaped the king's eyes. "And the young man you accused, the one you locked inside a police cell, he is your son." Those words pierced the king's heart like a sword. He collapsed to his knees before Adiza. The proud king who commanded thousands now wept openly before everyone. "I have sinned against you. I failed you. I failed our children." He beat his chest in regret. "I called my own son a thief. I humiliated my own daughter. I chased away the woman I once loved. Adiza, can you ever forgive me?" Adiza closed her eyes. "I leave judgment to God." The king stood up immediately, his face filled with urgency. He wiped away his tears and shouted, "Driver, my SUV, now!" The palace guards sprang into action. Within seconds, the king's sleek black armored SUV was waiting at the palace entrance. The king turned to his guards. "We're going to the police station. We are bringing my son home." As the convoy sped out of the palace, with sirens blaring, everyone watched in amazement. None of them knew that within the next few minutes, the life of an innocent young man sitting quietly behind prison bars was about to change forever. The king's convoy sped through the highway at full speed, escorted by armed palace guards and police outriders. The black luxury SUVs cut through traffic as the sirens echoed across the neighboring town. Inside the lead SUV, King Chibueze sat silently. His eyes were red from crying. He replayed every moment in his mind. The accusation, the humiliation, the tears of Chiamaka, Mike's sacrifice, and Adieze's years of suffering. He clenched his fists. How could I have judged an innocent man without seeking the truth? Adieze, seated beside him, gently said, "The truth always finds its way, my king." The king nodded. "I have been a king to the kingdom, but I failed to be a father." The convoy came to a sudden stop outside the police station. Police officers immediately stood at attention. The divisional police officer hurried outside. "Your Majesty." The king ignored the greetings. His voice thundered across the compound. "Bring Obinna out immediately." The officers looked at one another in confusion. Within seconds, a policeman rushed to the detention cell. He unlocked the heavy iron gate. "Obinna, the king wants to see you." Obinna slowly stood. "Has he finally accepted the money?" The officer smiled awkwardly. "I don't know, but you need to come." As Obinna stepped into the station's reception area, he saw King Chibueze standing there. Before he could kneel in greeting, something unbelievable happened. The king walked toward him and embraced him tightly. "My son, I'm so sorry." The entire police station became silent. Every officer stared in disbelief. Obinna stood frozen. "My son?" The king pulled back, tears flowing freely. "I have wronged you. I accused you. I imprisoned you. You were innocent all along." Obinna looked around in confusion. He saw Adieze smiling through tears. Beside her stood Chiamaka and Mike. "Mummy, you regain your sanity?" Adieze nodded. "And everything has been revealed. The king is your father." Obinna was speechless. For several moments, no words came out of his mouth. Finally, he said, "Thank God my mother had regained herself." Then he hugged his mother, and he whispered, "So, I have a father?" King Chibueze held both of his shoulders. "Yes. And if you can find it in your heart, forgive me." Obinna looked into his father's eyes. Then he smiled. "I forgive you." The king hugged him once more as everyone around them wiped away tears. A royal homecoming. The convoy returned to the palace. This time, Obinna and Chiamaka entered through the royal gates as the king's children. The palace workers lined both sides of the driveway. They applauded as the family walked inside. Inside the magnificent palace, Adieze looked around. So much has changed. The king smiled softly. "This palace has waited 22 years for you." The family embraced again in the luxurious royal sitting room, decorated with cream and gold furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, elegant chandeliers, and beautiful African artwork. For the first time in decades, they were together. Meanwhile, Mike finally succeeded in borrowing the remaining $1,000. He called Chiamaka immediately. "Hello?" Chiamaka answered with a trembling voice. "Mike, I've completed the money. Where are you? I'll come and pick you." Chiamaka laughed through happy tears. "You won't believe what has happened." Mike became worried. "What is it? I hope Obinna is all right." "God has done it." "What?" "My mother recovered. The king is our father. Obinna has been released. We're all at the palace." Mike stood speechless. Then tears rolled down his face. "Thank you, Lord. I'll be there immediately." When Mike arrived at the palace, Obinna ran toward him. The two friends embraced tightly. "You sold your taxi for me. You stood by my family. I can never repay you." Mike smiled. "You don't owe me anything. We are brothers." King Chibueze approached them. "I have heard everything." He turned to Mike. "Young man, from today, you are a son to this palace." Mike bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The king handed him a set of car keys. "I heard you sold your taxi. I have already instructed my manager to buy you 3 brand new executive taxis and register a transportation company in your name." Mike's eyes widened. "My king, this is too much." The king smiled. "It can never equal what you did for my children." Mike knelt in gratitude. The woman who saved 2 lives. The following morning, Obinna and Chiamaka sat with their mother in one of the palace's luxurious family lounges. "Mummy?" Chiamaka asked. How did you manage to give birth to us while you were wandering? Adeze closed her eyes. I can't remember everything. She tried to think harder. Suddenly, fragments of memories flashed through her mind. A small provision shop, a kind woman giving her food, a backyard, the cries of newborn babies. She opened her eyes. I remember. You do? Obina asked excitedly. Yes, there was a woman. She owned a provision store. She fed me. She took care of me. She helped me deliver both of you safely. I still remember her shop. We must find her. Obina smiled. Father, may I use one of your vehicles? The king laughed warmly. My son, everything in this kingdom belongs to you. You never need permission. Obina, accompanied by palace guards and the royal driver, traveled to the town. When they arrived at the old provision store, they found the elderly woman still running her business. The moment Adeze saw her, she recognized her instantly. The two women embraced with tears. The king thanked the woman publicly and built her a modern supermarket, a beautiful bungalow, and placed her on a lifetime monthly allowance. You saved my family when I knew nothing, the king said. I can never repay your kindness. 6 months later, the kingdom celebrated once again. This time, it was a wedding. Mike, dressed in an elegant black suit, stood proudly before the royal family. He looked at Obina. My brother, I have come to ask for your permission to marry your twin sister. Obina smiled mischievously. I'll give you permission, but first, I have one question. Mike laughed. I'm listening. Everything you sacrificed, was it because of me or because of my sister? Everyone laughed. Mike scratched his head. To be honest, both of you. The hall erupted into laughter. Obina hugged him. Then you have my blessing. Mike walked toward Chiamaka, who looked breathtaking in her white wedding gown. He knelt before her. Chiamaka, will you marry me? With tears of joy, she nodded. Yes, the palace exploded in applause. Their royal wedding became one of the grandest celebrations the kingdom had ever witnessed, held in the palace's magnificent banquet hall, with modern luxury decor, glittering chandeliers, floral arrangements, live high-life music, and hundreds of distinguished guests. Justice finally speaks. Meanwhile, Queen Amanda and her daughter remained at a prayer house for deliverance. One afternoon, during prayers, the princess suddenly burst into tears. I can't hide it anymore. Everyone turned toward her. I was the one. I stole the $5,000 from the king's briefcase. The pastor asked gently, Why? I needed money for drugs. I knew nobody would suspect me. She wept bitterly. After her confession, she gradually regained her senses and abandoned her addiction. She later returned to the palace, apologized to King Chibueze, Adeze, Obina, and Chiamaka, and dedicated herself to rehabilitation and serving the community by helping young people overcome substance abuse. Queen Amanda, however, remained mentally unstable. Despite the best medical care and constant prayers, her mind never fully recovered. King Chibueze ensured she was treated with dignity and compassion, recognizing that although she had committed terrible crimes, she was still the mother of his daughter. A new beginning. Months later, the kingdom gathered in the royal courtyard. Before his chiefs and subjects, King Chibueze stood with Adeze, Chiamaka, Mike, and the princess. He addressed the crowd. My people, a king who judges without investigation is not just. I nearly destroyed my own son because I acted in anger. From today, no one in this kingdom shall be condemned without a proper investigation. Thunderous applause filled the air. The king then held Obina's hand high. I proudly present to you my son, Prince Obina Chibueze, heir to this throne. The crowd erupted with joyful cheers as drums echoed through the kingdom. The reunited families stood together on the palace balcony, overlooking their people. What began with a false accusation ended with truth, forgiveness, justice, and the restoration of a family that destiny had never stopped protecting. What an incredible journey! From betrayal, false accusations, and years of hidden pain, to forgiveness, justice, and the reunion of a family. This story reminds us that the truth may be delayed, but it can never remain hidden forever. No matter how powerful lies may seem, God has a way of exposing darkness and restoring those who have been wronged. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this story. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next exciting African drama filled with suspense, love, family, and unforgettable twists. Share this story with your friends and family, and let us know in the comments, what lesson did you learn from King Chibueze's story, and which character touched your heart the most? Until next time, thank you for watching, stay blessed, and we'll see you in the next amazing story.